Bawat isa sa amin ay magpapatuloy sa aming mga sariling kandidatura upang maging karapat-dapat na pagpilian ng sambayanan.
Parang nililimit na lang yung choice or choices sa dalawa. Nakakahon na lang, and that's the reason why we have to do this. That among 111 or so million Filipinos, hindi lang dalawa yung pagpipilian. Actually, meron pang ibang tumatakbo.
One of them even called on serving second placer Vice President Leni Robredo to withdraw her candidacy.
I'm calling for Leni to withdraw. Kasi whatever you're doing is not effective against the Marcos. Withdraw, come and join us. Join us. Pwede pasab. Pasab naman. Baka kami maka 3 points. Isa sa amin.
Presidential candidate Ping Lacson insists that the call for Leni Robredo to withdraw is not a joint sentiment.
Baka mamaya merong impression na itong press con is all about telling Vice President Robredo to withdraw. No, not at all. Sa amin, walang mag-withdraw dapat. In the same manner na walang mag-withdraw sa amin, hindi kami mananawagan para mag-withdraw ang sino mang kandidato.
After the mixed messages from presidential candidates over the weekend on the appeals for unity, but with calls for a rival to withdraw, at the end of the day, no one is quitting in the presidential race. But how will the campaign look in the remaining 20 days? We discuss in this episode of The Chiefs. We will be joined by our guests and the other chiefs when we return. Welcome to the Chiefs. Ako po si Robbie Alampay. Kasama po natin from Manila online, Ami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star, and dito po sa Mandaluyong, Ed Lingao of One News. Chiefs, happy Monday.
Happy Monday. Happy Easter. Belated.
Oh, happy Easter.
Easter.
Oh. Tsaka happy Monday ba? Pero napa-overtime kayo kahapon na, Ami.
Oo nga na, bulabog lahat. At least nagkaroon ng balita. At tuloy-tuloy yung balita ngayon.
Oo
Hindi na titigil. Lahat ng reaction.
What did you think of it, Ed?
Mukhang tuloy-tuloy yan hanggang katapusan na. Well, we only have 20 days to go before Election Day. So, yeah, everybody's looking at the numbers. Naglabas ang Okta today ng kanyang latest figures. And more or less, they jive with Pulse Asia's
Pulse Asia.
end March numbers. Ang kaibahan lang, 1 to 2 percentage points. So, more or less, consistent.
But ang doon is, you still have yung kay Bongbong Marcos still leading, but you still have the narrative on the other hand of the Lenny camp na tumataas sila.
Yeah,
Diba?
but always the question naman is, tataas ba sila in time with 20 days to go?
And may mga tanong pa doon kahapon, yung ibang mga kandidato, particularly si Isko Moreno, Ping Lacson, and Norberto Gonzales, among the presidential candidates.
Fighting to be number 2.
Oh, is it enough? Is it the right strategy? Yun ang tanong nila. Now, joining us, para to help us to understand what happened yesterday, joining us, Professor Jaime Naval of the University of the Philippines Political Science Department. Good evening and welcome back to Chiefs, Professor Naval.
Good evening, Robbie and Ma'am Ami.
Hi, sir.
Sir, so para wala namang magsabing may kulay yung tanong ko, I'll just throw it to you open-ended. What did you think of the press conference yesterday?
Can I be blunt? The first thing that comes to my mind is someone committing harakiri. Determination is a good word, but it is also associated with the concept of desperation. And when one is so determined, he could be so desperate. And I'm surprised, not really surprised, after the press con or the debacle yesterday, just before we came to air, I was able to see na may mga clarifications or denials on what was the actual words. For example, not asking the Vice President to withdraw,
yes,
but only to do this or do that. And someone even saying na daw siya, chuchu ari-wari-wa, nagmimiron lang daw siya. The words are now being clarified. So ibig sabihin, pagka may kinaklarify ka on what seemed to be clear, there's a dissonance. May problema na binunga yung press con na mamahalin yung halo-halo.
Well, let's just clarify that for a bit. Kasi when you say na nag-clarify, si Ping Lacson certainly clarified. He was backing himself out of what...
Si Norby, kausap namin kanina.
Diba? They're saying, we just wanted to assert na tatakbo pa rin kami, di kami umaatras, yung call for withdrawal. But on the other hand, Isko Moreno seemed to be doubling down on that call for withdrawal today.
Well, Isko was the one who led the charge yesterday, calling on the Vice President to withdraw. And I tried to distance myself between whatever bias or partisan inclinations I have and analyzing it clinically from a distance. It does not make a good logic when you ask the number 2 to withdraw. So if you try to connect the logic of insisting or compelling the number 2 to withdraw because hindi niya na advance yung kanyang numbers vis-a-vis the front runner, of course there could be subjectivity there, then who's going to benefit? Presumably the number 3. But it does not go like that, just because the number 2 would withdraw, that the votes would be completely, majority even, would be turning to the next, to the third one. So may sinister, selfish orientation, yung proposition. And then now you hear Senator Lacson saying it was not his idea. But And I smile when I hear Senate President Tito Soto saying na siya daw ay meron lang. Now, everyone's trying to watch this. Talagang may extension pa ng Lenten season. May naghuhugas ng kamay, may nagka-clarify na hindi daw yun ang intent, etc. And even disowning, di ba sabi? Yung media kasi yung tanong na box in sila, kaya naging ganun yung tono. So when you hear a lot of explanation, that means the intended message is being disowned or
Yes, sir. Pero sir, apparently, sir, yung logic nila doon was that si Isko kasi is number 1 sa mga number 2. I know that
Yes.
sounds funny, pero basically that's it. He's the top second choice.
Yes.
Medyo nakakalito, di ba? Top second choice. But my question is that does it follow that if you're the top second choice, therefore you are the best contender for the top choice?
you have to dissect that process. Pagka tinanggal mo yung number 2, automatic ba naakit yung number 3? Not necessarily so. Because the people themselves can go either any of the top 4 who are in the race. I consider, however, that when these 3 presidential contenders and isama pa natin, I have yet to hear, sorry kasi I was in a meeting the whole day, on Manny Pacquiao, whether he's affirming that he was part of the 3.
Well, sir,
particularly on the
sir, sabi ni
statement.
Lito Atienza, sir, wala raw intention si Manny Pacquiao to attend. Sabi ni Lito Atienza,
Yes. Pero, so yun nga, kasi nothing was signed. And at the same time, you did not hear any interview of Manny Pacquiao. Wala naman siyang video na Isko was saying magkakaroon ng video appearance or message si Pacquiao. So all this, you could, one is led to suspect that someone was putting words into someone's mouth or someone's lips. Like take the case of Senator Lacson now saying hindi niya intention na pag-withdrawin si Leni Robredo. It is what happened is the press conference is now boldly defining the lines and the boundaries. For example, yung mga tao na nag-iisip pa, marami din naman hindi pa tapos ang kanilang desisyon sino iboboto, lalo na alternative kay Bongbong Marcos. So now you are defining the grounds, yung lay of the land and even the borders. Kung okay, itong tatlong to medyo duda na ako, it was like a trio of people sour graping over something that is fair and square, a part of the competition for votes, the rivalry for the voters.
So sa sour graping na yan, Professor, sino sa tingin nyo yung mas malaki ang magbe-benefit, si Bongbong Marcos or si Vice President Leni Robredo? Kasi yung iba sinasabi, maghihiwala-hiwalay din yung mga yan. Kung na-turn off dun sa tatlo, hindi rin kanina pupunta.
Will it go to Bongbong? I've asked that myself, no? Pero ito lang, can I answer it by another question? If, as of now, though there's a sizable decline sa latest survey on Bongbong and considerable din naman yung improvement ni Leni, then the thing we're talking or thinking about is may magkakaroon na ng momentum or there's a momentum building up. Ang tanong, and I think even one of the journalists even wrote this, sabi niya, kung talagang ang tanong natin ay, bakit yung momentum ay pinipresume natin at the time na hindi naman dumilitaw pa na malinaw dun sa survey. Pero saan yung mass of people that are thronging the campaigns of the Vice President, and they are, to say the least, they are evidently noticeable and they're not fake news or ano yung term pa nila, yung ine-edit lang yung mga video. Why is it, or so far we have yet to see, na magta-translate yung crowds into survey and more importantly into votes. On the other hand, thin naman yung crowd in general ni Bongbong Marcos, but it is not, the thinness is contradicted or not manifest opposite dun sa survey. So there's a paradox to me that is occurring. We may not really be seeing the true form and nature of the election landscape. So, pero between the survey and the tawag nila yung warm bodies, sorry, I am more for the warm bodies. And if this is sustained, I think we really have a very interesting competition towards the May 9 elections that we have.
Professor Naval, one last question before we let you go. Yung isa pang tema na kumakalat, at least the very least sa social media, in terms of very, very clear, very sharp reactions to the press conference yesterday, was the theme of what was supposedly misogynistic remarks by Isko Moreno. Nung sinabi niyang, gusto sana namin may sabihin, kaya lang, nahiya lang kami dahil nga babae, baka magalit, babae, nakakahiya, and so on. And he said babae kasi in some form or another at least 3 or 4 times. And I saw a lot of reactions on that. I mean, that's not necessarily scientific data. But
Yes.
is there something in that theme that you think does plant a kernel of some kind of thought regarding the campaign of Leni Robredo, being the only woman and also the leading one of the leading candidates in this field?
Well, it happens I had a consultation with some colleagues this afternoon regarding that comment. From one, if you are very sensitive and you would like to also make a score out of it, especially if you're partisan for the vice president, then there is really this misogynistic tone, if not outright misogynistic message that the Isko Moreno is communicating. In fact, we have not heard this side or seen this side of Isko previously. Pero this is the wonders of the elections. Ed can attest to it when you had me about 10 days ago. I said, watch out, the politics is miraculous. So may mga, this is the flair, the unseen side that sometimes in a spur of a moment or under pressure or because you have to fill in the void for words, lumilitaw yung mga hindi mo pinaplano. And remember that among all things of Isko Moreno, he's an actor. In fact, there he tried to keep to the script, which reputedly was signed by or agreed to by Lacson and Secretary Gonzales. But he kept to it. But then later, nag-clear from that NC, Senator Lacson. I think you could look at it from a very misogynistic perspective. But in fairness naman kay Isko, he may not have meant it that way, but perceptions would matter a lot, and the words that you release would define how people would perceive you. So he has to clear the air on what he really meant, and the more that you try to explain, ibig sabihin, marami kang dulas, marami kang bulilyaso na commit. Kailangan mo ipaliwan.
But sir, let me squeeze in one last. Sorry, pero nga, if you look at the last 6 years, the president has said much worse things, and ang naging feedback sa kanya, he's genuine, genuine kumbaga. So it becomes more of a plus point pa for him to some people, if not to many people.
Maybe that's along the line of the song na Magino pero medyo bastos po Magino. But Isko Moreno is someone who's manifesting somehow the DNA of the incumbent president. And whether that attracts supporters, then that's to his advantage. But I would imagine that would have to be reckoned with. He has to account for what he said, whether he meant it or it was just a slip that he did not intend. Ganun pa rin. So medyo right now, damage control, obviously, Senator Lacson is doing damage control. Kaya ini-insist na ang sinabi lang niya ay dapat lahat sila ay tuloy ang takbo sa pagkapangulo. Pero dinideny na ngayon yung pagre-request na o demand for the Vice President to withdraw. Abangan ang susunod na kabanata. This is politics intensifying as we spend the next 20 days or so for these elections in May.
Okay, maraming salamat po. That is Professor Jaime Naval of the UP Political Science Department. Maraming salamat po.
Ingat, sir.
Thank you very much.
Now, joining us, Mr. Ernest Ramel, Chairperson of Acción Democrático. Good evening and welcome to the Chiefs, Mr. Ramel.
Hi, good evening, Ruby. Hi, good evening, all the chiefs, Ed,
Hi, sir.
and
Yeah.
whoever is still there. Sorry.
Si Ami po, kasama rin natin.
Hi, good evening.
Mr. Ramel, just a quick detail kasi kanina, kausap ko kanina sa Big Story si Mr. Ramel. A lot of analysts are calling the press conference yesterday a debacle. They're saying it was disastrous for the people there. One basic question, whose idea was it?
I think there was a backstory that this came about almost a month ago because there were persistent calls for either one of them or some of them to withdraw. In fact, let me go back as far as October 8th when they made withdrawals got trend on Twitter and Facebook. So this came about. I cannot say who started the or initiated this press conference yesterday. So
you're saying it wasn't you. It wasn't Isko Moreno.
No, it wasn't I.
It wasn't Isko Moreno. It wasn't the camp of Isko Moreno.
I cannot. Well, it was an idea. A week ago, we were talking about it that there was this possibility of a press con, but as to who initiated it, it wasn't just clear. But it was an idea a week ago, and then yes, it happened yesterday.
No, I don't mean to be trivial about this. I'm only asking this because, Ping Lacson is distancing himself from this. This could, as some pundits are saying, this could be really a mess for everyone. So we just want to know. So can you categorically say that it was not your idea? It was not your camp's idea? I mean, when you say you're not sure, at the very least, can you say that categorically it was not your camp that started this?
Therefore, I cannot categorically say that.
Pero pwede nyo bang sabihin na involved si Senator Manny Pacquiao? Kasi sabi ni Deputy Speaker Lito Atienza, wala naman daw balak si Senator Pacquiao na pumunta doon in the first place. Pero ang pagkakaintindi namin kahapon, he just didn't make it. His flight failed to make it. Yun lang ang pagkakaintindi namin.
Well, as far as I know, when it was being talked about, Senator Pacquiao was thinking of joining. Second, he wanted it to be on another day or a different date because he has other engagements. But apparently, yesterday it pushed through. So probably the other engagement of Senator Pacquiao he was not able to cancel it. That's why he wasn't able to join it. But certainly, he was one of those people that, one of those presidential contenders that was invited to join.
But you're saying na he shared the sentiment na pinapa-withdraw din siya and he resented the idea that anyone should ask other candidates to withdraw. You're saying
that's right. He's one with that idea that none of them should be called upon to withdraw.
Sir, kasi I was speaking with Nord because he knows ay dalawang bagay lamang. Number one, na walang magwi-withdraw sa grupo at number two, papangalagaan yung resulta ng halalan. Basically, yun lang po. So, well, apparently the whole thing mutated into something completely different.
Yeah.
Yun po.
To be fair,
how did that happen?
To be fair to Senator Lacson, Secretary Gonzales, and Senator Pacquiao, for that matter, there was no intention to call for Vice President Lenny Robredo's withdrawal. However, it just came to the fore when Secretary Gonzales suggested that why not instead the number two, who cannot seem to be able to beat the front runner, be substituted or because that was his analysis. That why not let the others be the contender vis-a-vis the number 2. And I think gleaning from that, and then it went to the unification talks, no, and some other topics, no. But gleaning from that, Mayor Scott probably in his mind, because we have numbers that are showing that indeed the vice president is the least popular probable contender. Because if we could look at the recent Tangri survey from April 4 to 6, there was one question there where it was asked in Tagalog, kung ngayon ang eleksyon, sinong pangulo, sinong kandidato ang hindi mo iboboto bilang pangulo? So may hindi, no? And the number 1 there was Vice President Robredo with 45%, followed by Marcos with 13, Pacquiao 11, Lacson 3, and the least disliked was Mayor Sco Moreno. So, and aside from that, you also said earlier that Mayor Sco is a top second choice, no? In fact, in this survey, Mayor Sco is top second choice, 38%, and Vice President Robredo is just 9%. And to answer Professor Naval's question, in our data here, based on the Tangre survey of 2,400 respondents, if Mayor Sco will withdraw, 53.7 of his votes will go to Marcos, and only 17.56 will go to Vice President Robredo, whilst if Vice President Robredo withdraws, 51.55% of her votes might go to Isko Moreno, and only 8% will go to Marcos. So there, that's probably where the mayor was coming from. And then there was this persistent call the past week or so for him to make a supreme sacrifice and withdraw, coming from Team Orbos and his 5 friends who transferred to Lenny and some people from his camp. So it all added up. And he said that if the analysis of Secretary Gonzalez is right, and our numbers, our data that we have is also right, why not, true enough, or why don't she make the supreme sacrifice instead of her camp calling for us to make the supreme sacrifice, so to speak.
Yeah, but either way, you would acknowledge that the value is supreme sacrifice. Yeah, I mean, if it's fair for Isko to invoke that what I am invoking here is calling on you to make a supreme sacrifice. Let's grant that your logic and your math and your analysis is sound. On the other side, why resent, therefore, any other camp saying that, look, this is our analysis, we're the second runners, and this is not to ascribe it to the camp, these are just as supporters. But why is that so insulting when it is said to your camp, and yet your camp can invoke supreme sacrifice too?
You know what? It was not us who first invoked it.
Yeah, no, that's my point. I know. I'm not saying who's first, but what I'm saying is when it was first invoked, supreme sacrifice by other supporters, the Isko Moreno and Ping Lacson are basically saying napaka-insulting naman nun. But then why use the same argument and invoke the same line?
Well, I cannot explain where
you're both invoking
you're
both invoking sacrifice, diba? You're both calling on supreme sacrifice based on values, based on a common enemy, essentially based on common goals.
Yes. Again, like I said yesterday, I cannot say where Mayor Scott came from when he said, why don't you make also the supreme sacrifice? It was at that time the analysis of, again, Secretary Gonzalez, and then the data probably that he has in his mind that compelled him to say, in reverse, why don't you commit the same supreme sacrifice that your camp's been calling us to do? So it's just that he was just giving them a dose of their own medicine, so to speak.
Well, Mr. Ramel, I'm sure your camp is conducting now a post-mortem of the press conference. Yung initial assessment nyo, negative ba or positive for your standard bearer? Yung impact ng conference?
Well, of course, social media was a buzz yesterday, and these are primarily driven by the vice president supporters. So they were so angry, they were so mad. They used a gender card against Mayor Sko and the three. They branded them as misogynists, laggards, or someone along those lines, and which is not a good characterization of the vice president herself. The vice president could fend for herself. She's been a politician for 9 years. She's been a politician's wife for decades. So she's not someone who should be defended. Defenseless. Now she's not someone who's defenseless, like what Team Orbus is saying, that she cannot defend herself. Our analysis yesterday, it was the call is just right, based on the data that we have. That if there's someone who should consider or think about withdrawing, it could be the vice president herself. As shown also, probably, I don't know, the Okta survey seen also an increase in, I think, not Marcos's number from 54 to 57, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong, please. And yes, there was a bump in the vice president's number, but apparently it's not enough because we feel that she really has a ceiling. There's a ceiling in the support of the vice president. That's why she cannot break through that, despite the things, the good optics of her rallies are showing. She cannot really, take the fight closer to the front runner. And probably there's someone who could do better.
Well, this being a campaign, all your activities are meant to win votes. You think the press conference won you more supporters for Mayor Isko?
Well, at this time, we cannot gauge that. But based on the people that are giving us their support and saying that you did them right by calling them out as well, because for the longest time they're the ones who's been putting the onus on you to withdraw, and now that you put the onus on them, they're not so mad. So it smacks of double standard. In fact, I'm also surprised that they didn't call out Senator Lacson and Mayor Isko for saying that the vice president is a liar and the vice president deceives. In fact, sabi ni Senator Lacson, she deceived once, she deceived twice, she will deceive every time. And sabi rin ni Mayor Isko na, yeah, she lied to my face many times that she won't run. So why didn't they answer it? Is it because it's true?
Pero sir, if you use that argument, even Mayor Isko in 2020 was saying that he was not going to run.
That was January 2021, you're saying. But after that, talks began. It was initiated by the vice president herself, and she told Mayor Isko, I'm not running. She told probably, I don't know about Senator Lacson when they talked, what did she say to him? But of course, you heard Senator Lacson saying that she deceived once, twice, and so on. So, that's a different thing. Before that, there was a unification talks towards having a probable single candidate vis-a-vis now, apparently, the front runner, Ferdinand Marcos.
One last thing, Mr. Ramel, you did say you felt
Yes, sir.
it was unfair for other camps to play what you call the quote-unquote the gender card. So you could clarify on behalf of your candidate. So what did Isko Moreno mean when he said that, gusto na namin sabihin, nahiya lang kami kasi babae?
Well, I cannot speak for Mayor Isko on what he meant by it. The guy, I've known him for almost a year now, and he's a gentleman, and he had, in fact, prior to the deception, prior to the manipulation, Mayor Isko did tell me that he has a very high regard for the vice president, because we talked about her and him being, helping each other or uniting at that time. And what Mayor Isko has all good words for the vice president when we talk personally about her. But then again, of course, what happened after that, the lying and everything, probably that changed. So probably he has a different idea yesterday. I cannot speak for him as how he thinks, what he was thinking about babae and everything.
Okay, Mr. Ernest Ramel, maraming salamat po.
Thank you, sirs.
Thanks,
Thank
sir.
you, ma'am.
Mr. Ramel is chairperson of Acción Democrático. Please stay with us. The Chiefs will be right back.
Welcome back to Chiefs on One News, and now joining us is DOH Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere. Ma'am, magandang gabi and thank you. Welcome back thank you for joining us and welcome back.
Good evening, Yusek.
Good evening po.
Magandang gabi. Good evening po sa inyo.
Magandang gabi po. Ma'am, of course, all the concerns about a possible surge with the campaign in high gear, elections in 20 days, and katatapos lamang po ng Holy Week. In particular, ang Boracay may carrying capacity ng 19,000, umabot ng 22,000. So that's more or less around the over budget ng 15 to 16%. I'm wondering lamang po, meron bang dapat managot dito? For example, sa kaso ng Boracay, is there anybody who has to be held accountable for this? And how do we stop future things like these?
First, dun po sa mananagot, unang-una, ang local government po should be accountable for this because there had been regulations imposed already for this carrying capacity. Ever since po nung rehabilitation ng Boracay, naglagay na po ng carrying capacity dyan because nire-rehabilitate natin yung area. And then came itong COVID-19 na lalo pong nagkaroon ng regulations because of that. So by saying that, ang dapat po natin tignan, ano po naman ang ginawang pag-monitor at saka pagre-regulate ng ating local government, bakit lumagpas dun sa carrying capacity. Of course, we call on our local governments na sana po ma-impose natin yung ganitong regulation so that we may not have this kind of crowding in areas and we might have this further increase in cases if ever.
Well, ang World Health Organization nag-warning ngayon na baka daw by the end of May, we will see 300,000 active cases, no? Ano bang, aside from calling on people to continue masking, distancing, saka to ramp up boosters and primary doses, ano pa ba ang pwedeng gawin? Are you thinking of any new measures to encourage better compliance with protocols and more vaccinations?
Yes, ma'am. No? So the projections that WHO has just mentioned came from the projections also of DOH kasi we work with them also. So hindi nga lang 300,000, ma'am, it's almost 500,000 ang atin pong projections kung sakasakaling tataas ang ating kaso. With these measures that we are now imposing, it's all the same. Ang talagang kailangan po talaga natin makita ngayon would be enforcement. Local governments and of course the other national government agencies helping one another so that we can better enforce compliance to minimum public health standards. And also we should be able to generate more demand, especially for boosters kasi nakikita na natin na pumapasok ang iba't ibang sublineages ng Omicron. And alam natin that with Omicron, meron pong tinatawag na immune escape. So ibig sabihin, yung bakuna po na meron tayo ngayon sa ating katawan, naapektuhan itong Omicron variant. Kaya kailangan po magpa-booster tayo because immunity has been affected.
With these scenarios po, what's the latest advice that you're giving to the COMELEC and to local governments, lalong-lalo na pagdating natin sa election day?
Prior to COMELEC issuing their guidelines, they had been in touch with us. We had several meetings with them so that we can be able to draft and they can finalize their guidelines. So naibigay ho natin lahat yung mga safety protocols na kailangan. So it's up to the COMELEC right now to enforce these measures. It's still the same. Yung minimum public health standards po natin, yung crowding sa areas, yun pong mga physical distance, and of course, most especially, kailangan lagi nakamask ang mga tao, especially during election time.
Ma'am, na-postpone yung second booster shot for the vulnerable. Mga kailan kaya matutuloy yan? Dahil under review pa daw yung mga guidelines. How long will it delay?
Yes, ma'am, hindi naman po na-postpone. We have not issued any guidelines yet from the Department of Health. What was issued was the Food and Drug Administration's amendment of the Emergency Use Authority that we can already use based on their assessment. Pero kailangan pa magdaan kasi sa proseso ng Health Technology Assessment Council. And that is what we are waiting for sa ngayon. And according to them, a commitment would be within this week, baka may lumabas yung sa immunocompromised. Pero ang gusto kasi natin sabay-sabay lumabas ang assessment para po sa operations hindi challenging. So we will wait. Maybe in this next 2 weeks lalabas po yung guidelines and we can be able to do that already.
Ma'am, there was a study by Israel on the second booster shots. I don't know if this has been backed up by other studies in other countries as well. Pero if I recall correctly, in that study of Israel on the second booster shot, nagda-drop off na significantly yung effectivity or efficacy ng succeeding booster shots anywhere from 4 weeks to 8 weeks. So parang, in other words, parang halos every 2 months kailangan na magpa-booster as you go down. Parang decreasing effectivity as you go down. What does that mean po for us in the long term? Does that mean we will have to have more and more boosters more frequently?
Din po sa study na yan, although sinabi nga yung resulta ng study na yan, but they said that this needs further study. Ito pong pinapakita kasi, ang sinasabi nila, baka dapat mare-reformulate na, o kaya talagang moving forward na yung paggawa natin ng bakuna that is very specific already for these variants. Kasi ngayon, yung mga current vaccines natin, hindi naman talaga po yan tried and was studied based on the variants that we have. It was tried in the general sense, no? So ngayon, ang sinasabi, dapat very specific na so that we can adapt, no? Kung sakasakali, yung immunity natin according to the variants that are being produced. So ito pong study po sa Israel and even in other countries, no, parang 2 bansa po yung nagkaroon ng pag-aaral na ito. Sinasabi naman natin ng mga experts natin, although yung ating bakuna nga ngayon with a first booster, yung sa severity at saka sa deaths, it's still effective, although bumaba nga.
Opo.
Yung 4th dose will provide more protection for the vulnerable kasi sila po yung talagang pwedeng maapektuhan because of the waning immunity brought about by these vaccines.
Ma'am, sa mga modeling natin, yung projections na aabot ng hundreds of thousands, maybe up to 500,000, along with the factors of one, nag-alisan yung mga tao, nag-uwian sa mga probinsya just in this past week. Pagkatapos hindi pantay-pantay ang pagkabakuna sa iba-ibang lugar ng Pilipinas. Are there particular regions or potential hotspots that you are looking at?
When we talk about vaccination, mababa po ang bakunahan sa Mindanao area, specifically po sa BARM at saka sa Region 12. Ito po yung medyo naglalag behind dun sa ating mga accomplishments for vaccine. So ngayon po may strategy na ang ating government kung saan talagang tututukan in the next days. Meron na hong start ng end of April matapos po ang Ramadan at tutulungan na ho natin ang local governments doon para tumaas ang ating bakunahan. So in terms of hotspots, if we talk about the effect of vaccination, the protection it provides the population, pag mababa ang bakunahan ng isang area, definitely binabantayan ho namin maigi kasi mas yung probability of increase in cases and the probability of a lot of severe and critical, dyan po sa areas na yan mangyayari kung sakasakali.
Yung second recommendation ng Pfizer for their second booster for ages 50 above. So may possibility ba na bababa din yung age limit natin?
Lahat naman po pinag-aaralan, as soon as evidence is there, our experts are there also studying. Pero ngayon kasi, ang completed evidence pa lang talaga, actually initial evidence po, na meron talagang naipapakita would be for 60 years old and above. And of course, the immunocompromised. Yun po yung pinakita. And the FDA also provided us with an amended EUA na nirequest naman po ng DOH na kasama po ang healthcare workers because we consider them as part of our vulnerable population at this time of the pandemic.
Kumusta po yung effort niyo for house-to-house vaccination? Kasi sabi nga nila kahit mag-house-to-house kayo kung ayaw ng tao hindi nyo rin mapipilit. What's the progress?
Tama po yan, ma'am. No? So we've had several experiences kung saan nag-house-to-house nga and makikita natin talaga kung talagang hesitant yung tao, talagang hirap talaga. It's really a challenge. Ang isa pang naging challenge sa atin, syempre nagkaroon po ng religious activity ang ating mga kapatid na Muslims. So hindi po namin magawa yan ngayon muna sa Mindanao area. But what we have done would be expanding the areas kung saan pwede pa maka-access ang tao. Pumunta po tayo sa workplaces, pumunta tayo sa mga pharmacy, sa mga outpatient na mga doktor, nagpunta tayo sa mga eskwelahan, sa mga simbahan. During this Holy Week, nagkaroon tayo ng mga ganyang bakunahan. So hopefully in the other regions, it will also be mirrored so that we can be able to improve on vaccination coverage.
Okay, Yusek, final question na lang po. Nag-uwian na yung mga tao or at least nag-uuwian na. When they get back home, are there any standard things that they should be thinking about, practicing, observing amongst each other in the households?
Yes, thank you for that. No, we just want to remind, no, the Department of Health is reminding everybody who went to other places during this time of the Holy Week. Nakita po natin kung gaano ka-crowded in Puerto Galera. There was this big party wherein nobody was wearing a mask. Sa Boracay po, nakita natin how crowded it was. Overcapacity po talaga. Nagpapaalala po ang Department of Health na sa lahat po ng bumiyahe at pumunta sa ibang lugar, nakisalamuha sa ibang tao, please monitor yourself. Monitor yourself for 5 to 7 days kung magkakaroon ng sintomas. Magmask muna po tayo kahit sa loob ng bahay para lang po iwas muna tayo sa infection. At lagi po natin siguraduhin na kapag kayo ay nakaramdam na ng mga sintomas, please isolate at once.
Kailangan natin i-check yung Boracay na yan.
Anyway, DOH Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere, ma'am, maraming salamat po. Happy Easter po.
Thank you, ma'am.
Happy Easter. Maraming salamat.
And that will be all for this edition of the Chiefs. We hope what was discussed here will keep the conversation going. Before we go, a reminder to our viewers, mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines. I'm Robbie Alampay.
I'm Ami Paminton of the Philippine Star.
I'm Ed Lingao, and we are One News.